Capcom is a titan of the video game industry. There's one franchise that has been quite absent for a few years now, but it had a resurgence thanks to a legacy collection. The MegaMan Battle Network franchise is loaded from start to finish, mostly, with incredible games, being a wonderful RPG series with unique mechanics to this day. As someone who's been playing these games since I was a young kid, I wanted to go through the series again as a grown man and see how they hold up. Most games are about as good as you remember, but there is one entry that got the short end of the stick, really badly. I'm here to settle the score and clear the name of this game. MegaMan Battle Network 5, Team Proto Man and Team Colonel were the 5th games in the Battle Network series, following the incredible sales of Battle Network 4 and releasing less than a year after it. How they pumped out this quality of game year after year blows my mind. Before we get into the actual story of Battle Network 5, I have a very fun and disturbing statistic to share with you. Battle Network 1 sold 224,000 units, 2 sold 446,000 units, Battle Network 3, which an argument can be made that it's the best game in the series, comes in at 668,000 units. Take a wild guess how well Battle Network 4 sold. 1,350,000 units. A staggering number, but it's a product of being in the right place at the right time, with the coinciding anime being at its peak of popularity. I honestly think this did more damage to the series than it did help it, because Battle Network 5 sold a meager 405,000 units. That's less than a third of what Battle Network 4 did, and sadly, it's even less than what Battle Network 2 did. But we're not here to discuss Battle Network 4, I've already made a video covering that. This is the story of Battle Network 5. Our game begins with Lan's father, Dr. Hikari, having something to show us. We don't even get to see what it is because the whole room gets gassed immediately. Because this game brings back a linear narrative, I'm going to be bringing back the near-death count to show how many times Lan almost dies in Battle Network 5. Shout out to the villain team here for being mostly thorough and super menacing right out of the gate. Lan's father, Dr. Hikari, is not only kidnapped, but the entire net has been taken over by powerful Navis. The villain group responsible for this is Nebula, led by Dr. Regal from Battle Network 4. Last we saw him, he was jumping off a tower, but I guess he got better. So because this game is loaded with Navis that are both good guys or bad guys, we had to thin the herd a little bit. And what better way to exclude the main 3 characters in Lan's friend group than by just simply taking their PETs away. No more Roll, Glide, or Gutsman for the remainder of the playthrough. The roles that their operators play as well is going to be pretty slim. Miraculously though, somehow they miss Lan, which means it's up to us to save the internet. Again. This technically brings us to our first scenario, which is in Scilab. And let me tell you, going from the random scenarios in Battle Network 4 to a way more structured dungeon in Battle Network 5 is so refreshing. The series is at its peak when you have a linear story and characters have enough time in their arcs to get built up and actually be important to the main story. Can you tell I'm still a little salty about Battle Network 4? So the game gets interesting very quickly as we encounter our first boss, Colonel. Now, to take a step back, there are version differences between Team Proto Man and Team Colonel. To keep it simple, I'm going to be talking about the Team Colonel playthrough because that's what I chose for a good amount of reasons. The biggest reason being that this dude's name is Eugene. Did you guys know that? His name is Eugene Chod. Come on now. But no, the real reason why I chose Team Colonel is, if you never played Team Colonel and were to play Battle Network 6, you'd be like, who is this guy? Why do I care about him? What is going on? And you already know about Chod and Proto Man and the majority of the big players in 6 if you've played all the other games but Team Proto Man. With that explanation out of the way, let's talk about Colonel and his operator Beryl. These two are an extremely powerful duo that are in charge of the anti-Nebula core, and our fight against them was just a test. The plan is simple. We're going to recruit a powerful group of Navis and operators in order to take down Nebula and reclaim the internet. Starting with our 12-year-old protagonist. Although to be fair, Lan and MegaMan have saved the world countless times now, so I guess it is pretty refreshing that Battle Network 5 is actually treating them like a competent duo that they are. The game starts off strong with a completely brand new mechanic to the series called Liberation Missions. Think baby's first strategy game. For the first time in the series, you actually get to control other Navis aside from MegaMan. In a liberation mission, you'll use a pre-selected group of Navis to reach the end of an area, clearing out dark panels and defeating the boss at the end of the stage. You'll earn sweet rewards the faster you can clear the mission, and your efficiency in clearing objectives is measured by how many turns it takes you to complete the entire stage, how many tries does it take you to clear a panel, and how efficiently you use each Navi and their unique abilities. The version differences are pretty significant as far as gameplay goes, because each team has completely unique set of Navis for you to use. Personally, with the exception of one specific Navi in Team Colonel, I think that this is the team that has way cooler Navis than Team Proto-Man. Regardless, after defeating Blizzard Man, who is the Dark Lloyd in charge of AC/DC, we've liberated our first area and completed our first mission as a team. Complete side note, but I swear to everything, we're like 5 years away from Battle Network happening in real life. Because 3/4 of the crew doesn't even have a PET anymore, and the net is still being taken over by Nebula, our friends decide to have a filler episode and go to the beach. Only they didn't know it wasn't gonna be a filler episode. We head off to Orin Island, an old abandoned mining island, and have ourselves a misadventure so funny it's even referenced in Star Force 3. Conveniently, the next area of the net that we'll be liberating is Orange Isle, but we can't get past that insane firepower guarding the enemy leader. Early on, you realize that Battle Network 5 does a great job of justifying why each member of the team is valuable, and what each member of the team brings to the table. Not only that, they bring back old allies and enemies from previous games, making me feel rewarded for being a longtime fan of the series as a whole. For example, does anybody remember Princess Pride? She was part of the enemy team from Battle Network 2, Gospel, and she was also very directly responsible for a lot of people getting hurt and almost killed in really horrific ways. Well, she's looking a lot better than she did back then, and with yet another life-threatening scenario behind us, we recruit her and her Navi Nightman to be our dedicated tank, and together we take down Shademan for like the 4th time.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
I love the young people.
Speaking of being part of a team, fellas, if you're enjoying the video, do me a favor. Like the video and hit the subscribe button. We've come a long way from where my dad was my only follower, and there's plenty of more fun videos that I've got cooking up. It'd mean a lot to me, so thanks in advance. This game has something wonderful that Battle Network 4 beats into the ground. Structure. The scenarios are very carefully laid out as follows. Lan and MegaMan have an encounter with a powerful Navi and operator. They have some altercation that causes them to butt heads, then they end up using that unique Navi's abilities to help them get to the next Nebula boss. Then, we end the arc with a liberation mission. Your reward for all your trouble is the return of the Double Soul system, MegaMan bonding with his new team members and giving you meaningful gameplay changes through transformations. You guys want to know what I think Team Colonel is missing? More super terrorists.
What do you mean by that?
Lan and MegaMan run into a strange pajama-wearing badass who puts the boys through the ringer using his Navi Shadow Man. Yes, that Shadow Man from Battle Network 2. The one that single-handedly destroyed Yumland's infrastructure and caused Proto-Man to be deleted. This is a top 5 character design, so honestly, all's forgiven. Shadow Man is a super powerful Navi who's fun to use, and we make quick work of Cloudman. Shout out again to Nebula for being so competent as a villain group, because they turn a loss into a massive victory, kidnapping MegaMan right in front of the whole team. We've briefly seen what Lan is like without MegaMan, and it is soul crushing. It takes a slap in the face from Beryl to put Lan's head back in the game, to rescue MegaMan and liberate the net. Beryl is so confident in Lan's abilities that for a good while we actually get to operate Colonel as our main Navi for the next scenario. The antagonist for this next arc being none other than MegaMan himself. Remember in Battle Network when I said that the dark chips were an allegory for drugs? Yeah, it's about to get a little dark. MegaMan was corrupted and forced to become Dark Mega, completely under Regal's control. Before we can save him, we have to figure out a way to up the team's firepower. There's a Giga Yacht that will be having an auction for some incredibly powerful tech, and we have reason to believe Nebula's gonna try to steal it. funny enough, when it does get stolen, the totally not suspicious looking Nebula agent just straight up admits that it wasn't him. I mean, like, he was gonna steal it, but he didn't get around to it yet. Turns out to be a hot-blooded young man named Dingo who stole the tech because the company that created it destroyed his village in the process. As a kid, I asked myself who could do such a horrible thing. But as a grown man, yeah, this isn't surprising at all. Maybe we're only 3 years away from Battle Network being real. With the ship system sabotaged, we go through what is probably the worst stage in the whole game. You navigate a maze to progress by picking up keys while also having an oxygen mechanic, taking damage when it runs out. Why these digital programs have limitations like breathing make no sense to me, but that's just classic Battle Network logic. At the end of it, we have a battle with what I believe is the coolest and most problematic Navi design in the entire series, Tomahawk Man. This is an extremely powerful Navi as a teammate, and his role in the team is to be the hard DPS. With his help, we subdue Dark Mega and are able to bring him back, this time with some huge upgrades. This is probably the coolest and most unique thing about Battle Network 5, the Chaos Unison. Unlike Battle Network 4, the dark chips in 5 can be collected like normal chips and be put into your folder manually. Because MegaMan is tapped into the Dark Soul, he can basically combine the power of dark chips with his double soul ability, allowing him to use the power of the dark chips as his charge attack, without any of the drawbacks. Yeah, it's as broken as it sounds. My favorite by far being Dark Invis, where you allow your Dark Soul to completely take over MegaMan's actions using any of the chips that you've used and makes you invulnerable in the meantime. The only drawback is you have to get used to the charge attack timing, because if you fail it, your Dark Soul will come out and aggressively try to destroy you. Absolutely worth the risk if you ask me. Let's take a quick stock of the team members here. Eco-Terrorist, Super Terrorist, and Sexy Terrorist. What we need now is a fourth flavor to round things out. How about Nerdy Terrorist? Despite being around in pretty much every game in the series, I have not forgiven Higsby for kidnapping Miss Mari, and then trying to mac on her in every game. This dude needs to get locked up in the deepest cell in Arkham Asylum. Regardless, he's here to help us try and uncover what Dr. Hikari was trying to show us at the start of the game. This next part can get very esoteric if you don't use a guide. Grandpa Hikari leaves us an encoded message talking about a dog named Gao. A few cryptic puzzles later, and we end up in what seems to be a digital past recreation of AC/DC known as a Vision Burst. Just in time for Nebula agents led by none other than Number Man to bust into the scene. I knew it, by the way. I knew this dude couldn't be trusted. In order to fix things, we head over to End City and go through what might be the most difficult minigame in the entire series. Not even kidding, by the way, in the DS version they lowered the difficulty of the Samurai minigame because this was just a hard progression stopper. Since I'm playing the Legacy Collection, I didn't have a choice but to get past it, but it did take a few tries. The Gargoyle Comp stage is really long, but kinda cool, where you use ninjas with different powers to get through obstacles. This puzzle could be a bit of a head scratcher, but gets an A for creativity from me. After fighting Number Man, we actually realized that it's been a huge setup. Two Nebula agents disguised themselves as Number Man and MegaMan, so that Number Man we saw in Virtual AC/DC was just an imposter, and the fake MegaMan that Number Man saw, who destroyed Miss Mari's Navi, was actually trying to pin the blame on us. After dispatching them, we head straight for the Liberation mission, taking on Cosmo Man, a fearsome and intimidating Navi. Once he's gone, the entire net is freed from Nebula's grasp. Look, I hate to say it, but Nebula has to be one of the most competent villain teams of all time. It turns out that taking over the net wasn't even Nebula's main goal, it was simply to buy them time. Regal is one step closer to world domination. With the second boss of the series now joining the team, all that's left is to find a way to break into the Undernet. And I was blown away by who the final member of the team is going to be. Who remembers Rabita and Toadman? These two were extremely powerful optional bosses in Battle Network 2, and they demolished me over and over again every time I tried to take them down. Rabita the reporter is looking for a scoop and is willing to head to the Undernet to find it. Honestly, with how strong Toadman is, I actually think they'd be just fine. After another cryptic puzzle hunt, we discover our second vision burst, the digital recreation of the real-world places, this time being Orin Island. The key player of the story, Gal, gets kidnapped by Nebula, and they even attack Scilab HQ. Hagsby makes himself useful by allowing Team Colonel to use his secret Gooner dungeon as their HQ. Things look bad, but don't worry because they're about to get a whole lot worse. After saving Rabita and Toadman from a revived Cloudman, Colonel seems to be deleted. With the team needing a leader, Lan is chosen to step up and take charge, which is a pretty tall order considering how much responsibility they're asking him to burden. Rabita and Toadman go as far as breaking into the Undernet to have Lan and MegaMan pursue them, proving that they have the intelligence and sense of right and wrong to lead the team, giving them a final confidence boost before the final liberation. And of course, the last Navi guarding the Undernet happens to be none other than Colonel, corrupted by the Dark Soul the same way MegaMan was earlier in the game. Well, he was about to end my life. Did you guys see that? He was about to hit him with the point blank fucking hollow purple like this. Before we can save Colonel, he disappears away, and we move on to the next step of Regal's plan. Buckle up, because this is going to get pretty wild. It turns out that the digital dog Gao was actually the disguise of what is known as the Hikari Report, written by Lan's grandfather. Regal plans to use the technology known as SoulNet, which was meant to link humans and Navi's souls through the net to corrupt them with evil and take over the world. It's no bluff either. We've seen what the Dark Soul did to MegaMan and Colonel, so imagine what would happen if that were to happen to people on a global scale. Fortunately, the only person not affected by this happens to be Lan, conveniently given his grandfather's lucky amulet by his mom moments before Regal launches his plan. It's up to Lan and MegaMan to scour the net, destroy the microservers emitting waves that cause people to go completely bananas. They all kind of behave as if they've lost their vape pens. This means we have a fun world tour where we have to take down our own teammates, culminating in another run-in with Colonel. But with the help of Toadman and, what's this? Proto-Man, we're actually able to subdue and purify him. I find this hilarious because this is Proto-Man's only appearance in the game, so they have to justify why such an elite Navi wouldn't be part of the team, and where he's been the whole time. In Team Proto-Man, it's even weirder because it's Colonel who helps to save Proto-Man, giving no explanation as to who he is or why he matters. This is why, to me, Team Colonel feels like the canon choice. Anyway, I have to dedicate time to talk about the Colonel Soul, because it's probably the most unique soul in the whole game. Using obstacle chips while in Colonel Soul turns them into soldiers that'll shoot enemies that line up to them, which is really cool, but the real magic is in the charge attack. Colonel Soul's charge attack is the same as Colonel's, a green V shape that does a ton of damage. However, you can attach any non-screen dimming neutral chip into your arm, replacing your charge attack with that chip. As someone who loves and abuses the Scully chip, that discovery blew me away. Not to mention it probably has the coolest double soul design. With Team Colonel back together, it's finally time to strike back at Nebula. We get one final vision burst showing us Grandpa Hikari and a young Dr. Wily laying out the groundwork for the SoulNet, uniting people and Navis by turning people's souls into data. Imagine that, a world without any strife. With their project incomplete, their intent was for the next generation to complete their work, through Lan's father Dr. Hikari and Dr. Wily's son, who is none other than Dr. Regal. This is basically the instrumentality project from Ava, or Sexy Victor's goal in Arcane. Sign me up.
Victor Nation, how are we feeling?
With that, we come to the last leg of the game, complete with a villainous secret base. The Dark Chip Factory lies inside of a volcano. This has to be one of the all-time greatest final stages in the Battle Network series, purely because it's the culmination of what makes this game so great. We team up and control every single member of Team Colonel to progress, with each of them willing to sacrifice themselves to save the world. They really hammered down the point that without a team, Lan and MegaMan couldn't have possibly made it this far. It fully is a team effort. But like I've been saying the entire game, Regal has to be one of the greatest villains ever, totally succeeding in his plan. He activates the SoulNet and takes control of people's emotions. as Mega Man is seemingly alone and jumped by the once again revived Darkloids, all of our friends we made along the way come out to support us, including the AC/DC trio. This is literally the final scene from Avengers Endgame down to the portals, but I feel like with the amount of setup they've put in, they kinda deserve this payout. All that's left is to fight the final boss, Nebula Grey. This was a dark program that Regal created to emulate humanity's dark thoughts and instincts. Now, as far as final bosses in the series go, this guy rules. Nebula Grey feels tough, but fair, having none of the frustrating, cheap aspects of a final boss like Duo, but still being able to limit what you can do and dish out a ton of damage. It also really helps that it might have been the best final boss track in the whole series. This is an insanely tough battle though, because after defeating it in battle, Nebula persists. Even after turning into Hub for the first time in the series, Mega Man still isn't able to extinguish the evil. It literally takes the power of friendship to destroy Nebula Grey once and for all. With Regal's plans foiled and his volcano base collapsing, everyone escapes except for Regal and Dr. Hikari, who tries to reason with him that it's not too late to make amends for what he's done. Even though Regal does somewhat turn a new leaf here, he still thinks he's too far gone. Then Dr. Wily shows up, of all people. Real quick, can I get a close-up of that guy's head dent? Oh my god, man, he looks like a bean. Wily overrides SoulNet to wipe Regal's memory of the past decade, with the intent of hoping he makes amends with a clean slate. And if that isn't enough shock value for you, Beryl shows up too. Dr. Wily then entrusts both of them to Beryl, seemingly having familiarity with the man. There's been no clue as to what's going on or why this happened, and it's even crazier to think that the Proto Man version of this scene doesn't include Wily at all, he's just a voice without a face, which to me cements the fact that Team Colonel has to be the canon version. To wrap things up with a nice neat bow, Team Colonel meets up back at Scilab HQ, introducing the latest scientists working towards the good of humanity. The person being none other than Dr. Regal, his memories being wiped. This poses a pretty insane ethical question, but can you force Regal to pay for crimes he doesn't remember committing? Especially when you factor in how much good he can do for humanity now. This is actually a pretty interesting question to me, and one that was similarly posed in Honkai Star Rail in regards to one of the main characters. Anyway, with Nebula defeated, Team Colonel is officially disbanded, and with their break from school over, Lane can go back to being just a regular kid. Until next time. Mega Man Battle Network 5 is an objectively better game than 4, but between the damage 4 did to its reputation and the fact that this game came late into the GBA's life cycle, it was just too little too late. Shout out as usual to Capcom's development team for coming up with fun, refreshing ideas and a great return to form for the series. Keep in mind that in Battle Network 5's development, it was only less than a year after 4's release, regarded as being one of the top 3 games in the Battle Network franchise, an opinion that I fully agree with. I'm a little heartbroken that we only have one game left to cover. Hey fellas, thank you all so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, consider dropping a like because it actually goes a long way towards having the video reach the Battle Network audience, wherever they may be. And if you love Mega Man or anything Capcom in general, consider hitting that subscribe button because there's going to be a whole lot more of that coming soon. I have an unexpected life update, but for the foreseeable future, it looks like I'll be taking content creation as a full-time deal. As a disabled veteran, I can't work my trade job anymore because my body just can't take it. So look forward to more journeys overall on my Twitch channel and the catalog stories here on YouTube. Hope to see you all for the next one. Until then, peace.